Great to have you with us today. You just heard Mick Mulvaney, the acting chief of staff. Where does this put you?
Anna, this has been a very difficult 24 hours for me. The issue of impeachment is really big to me. And when I heard what Mulvaney said, the chief of staff of the president, it pushed me really across the Rubicon. And I'll tell you why. Withholding military aid, vital military aid, to a nation like Ukraine, which has Russian troops inside its territory, that's threatened all the time, that withholding it so that a political operation can take place, investigate this thing around the server, and we're going to withhold the aid until you do that. To me, it's totally inappropriate. It's an abuse of power. Now, I know that there are presidents that will withhold aid because they have policy differences, but this is not a policy difference. And so my view is that, look, I fought with people on the air about, is there a quid pro quo and does this rise to the level of impeachment? I now believe that it does. And
okay.
I say it with great sadness. This is not something I really wanted to do. I mean, I voted to impeach Bill Clinton, and that was really hard. And this has been excruciatingly hard. But this kind of behavior, in my opinion, cannot be tolerated, and action is going to have to be taken.
Let me get some clarification from you, though. When you say you believe this behavior rises to the level of impeachment, are you saying, yes, this president should be impeached based on what we know now? And does that also mean that you believe he should be tried in the Senate and removed from office?
First of all, I want to see what the articles of impeachment are that the Democrats put together. And secondly, I don't like the way they've conducted this without having a vote on an impeachment inquiry. But if you're asking me if I was sitting in the House of Representatives today and you were to ask me, how do I feel? Do I think impeachment should move forward and should go for a full examination and a trial in the United States Senate? My vote would be yes. And I don't say it lightly. This is extremely difficult for me, but it's what I feel I have to do. It's what my conscience tells me. You can't operate like this and withhold vital military aid for somebody because you're involved in some sort of a political examination or pressure on a foreign government to do this. It's inappropriate.
Do you believe he should be removed from office then? Do you believe the Senate should convict and remove him from office?
Let's go. I want to see what the articles of impeachment are, and I want to see exactly how they can bring the American people along. Let's just slow down. But this is a very big step for me. We'll see how those articles are. We'll see how they bring the American people around. Then we'll get into the Senate. I'm now speaking as if I were a member of the House, like I was when I voted to impeach Bill Clinton. And obviously, I consider it to be really, really a big deal. And if I didn't think that represented a notion that he should be removed, I wouldn't tell you that it should move forward. I think it should.
Okay. Let me also ask you then, you know, what we've been hearing out of this White House, just pushing the conversation forward. It seems like the White House can't keep its story straight about what really happened with the president and this administration's interaction with Ukraine when it comes to these investigations. What do you make of their changing story?
Well, I think they're trying to figure it out. And when you have this guy, Gordon Sondland, and these text messages between him and the man in charge of the embassy, Taylor, and Volker, who was the special envoy, and you had one of them saying, was this a quid pro quo? And then there was 5 hours of delay before anybody got back to say, no, the president told me there wasn't one. That was curious in and of itself. But the continued development of a story that shows that we almost had a shadow government. We had a shadow State Department operating also, of course, leaves me uneasy. But it was the admission yesterday by Mulvaney, who clearly just said, look, of course we withheld it for that reason. That, to me, was the final straw as far as I'm concerned about this. And Republicans should be at least calling for an inquiry. There's no reason for them not to do it. And Democrats have to conduct this in such a way that it is open, that it is clear, and that the American people can be brought along. You're not going to have everybody in the Republican Party saying it, but growing numbers of people that say this is wrong. If Barack Obama had been doing something like this, the Republicans would be going crazy. okay? But now it's their own guy doing it. What's fair is fair. I don't like to have to say this, Anna. I don't like it at all, but I have to say it because that's what my conscience tells me, and that's why I'm on today to tell you how I'm proceeding.
You've now said you would vote for impeachment of this president if you were still in the House, and yet we've really heard very little other Republicans who are currently in the House say those same words. We know, in fact,
Anna,
I don't think there's a sitting senator at this point who said Republican senator specifically, who has said they believe this president should be removed from office. What advice do you have to your fellow Republicans, specifically in the Senate, who would be the ultimate jury in this?
Yeah, well, they don't want my advice, believe me, and this will aggravate many of them that I'm saying this. But I think you have to look at yourself and say, what do we expect out of a president? How do we expect the president to conduct foreign policy? Are there some lines that simply cannot be crossed? And look, I'm very alone on this. I don't know many Republicans that have said what I've said, and I don't say it lightly. This was very difficult. Look, the last 24 hours has really forced me to review all of this. And it was not long ago that I was in a debate with one of our hosts about the fact that I wasn't ready to say anything like this. But when I look at all the information that's coming to us and all the craziness that's surrounding the operation of the White House, now the resignation sometime this year of Secretary Perry and his involvement, and it just goes on and on and on. And at this point, there's a big cloud, and I think it has to be cleared.
What do you make of the fact that most Republicans have been more angry about what the president did in Syria over these actions involving Ukraine and everything else?
Well, that was easy for them because there was strength in numbers. It's very difficult for a Republican to come out and say anything like this because they're going to get attacked at home. You know, I have no doubt in my mind that there's going to be people going to be really angry with me for saying this. You got to be willing to take the heat, frankly. But I don't want to just spend my time. Let me tell you this. Why won't the Democrats vote on an impeachment inquiry in the House of Representatives? Politics. And this is not about politics. When you're talking about the potential of removing somebody from public office who was elected a president, there isn't any time for politics. And I was reading yesterday in the newspaper, well, these members, Democrat members, came back to Washington, and they were like, oh, no, please don't make me vote. This is really going to upset things for me in the future. Well, that's why you're there. And so I would encourage the Democrats to have a vote on the impeachment inquiry, to get all the facts out there so that people can understand what's at risk. But the bottom line on this is, for the women who would watch this or people considering this, is it right for a president of the United States to withhold vital military aid on a country that is in deep trouble, that's trying to tilt towards the West and not be gobbled up by Russia? Is it right for that military aid to be withheld because you want to conduct an investigation that is not even related to public policy? That is the question, and that's what you've got to ask yourself. And that's what I've done, and that's why I've concluded what I have.
Quickly,
the answer
if you will.
is no, wrong.
Are you hearing that from Republicans in private? They just aren't saying it in public?
Well, you know, look, a lot of people aren't really focused on this, Anna, across the country. This is not where their focus is, but it's growing. There's now support for a full investigation. So people, outside of the bubble in which we exist, don't sit around at night and just say, okay, what do we think about impeachment? They're worried about their kids going to school. They're worried about their health care bills. They're worried about their jobs. But this will grow over time, I suspect. And, I don't know where the people will end up on this, but, I saw this happen with Clinton. I was aware of what happened with Nixon. I just wish it wasn't happening. I don't like any of this. This is not what I do best, but I have to just tell you how I feel.
Well, let me just put a button on all of this in terms of where the public's at. We know the latest poll from Gallup is showing the majority of voters out there right now believe the president should be impeached and removed. 52% say that to 46% who say no. Governor Kasich, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, for joining us today.
Okay, Anna, thank you.